It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley are here, and it's Rant Week on Windows Weekly. Find out what Paul thinks of Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and other legends of the industry. Mary Jo Foley coins a new term for the next Microsoft operating system, and we'll take a look at the missing version of Windows. Where is 19H2? It's all coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, episode 627, recorded Wednesday, June 26th, 2019. Credge my Mandroid. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Capterra. Find the right tools to make an informed software decision for your business. Capterra is software selection simplified. Visit Capterra's free website at capterra.com/windows. And by Thinkst Canary. Detect attackers on your network with honeypots that could be deployed in minutes. For 10% off and a 60-day money-back guarantee, go to canary.tools/twit and enter the code TWIT in the How Did You Hear About Us box. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we get together with the beer drinker and the coffee lover. And I'm trying to give you nicknames. It's not working. And
Leo, it's funny you mentioned coffee today because my coffee maker just died this morning, and I had to go to Dunkin' Donuts like a poor person. And actually, I don't know if you've been there recently. Coffee is actually very expensive now, but and buy like lattes out on the street.
like a savage, like a caveman.
Yeah. Will write for coffee.
I remember that in what was that Raquel Welch movie, 10 Million Years BC? She had to go down to the corner to get her espresso. It was shocking.
You have a better memory of that movie than I do, but okay.
The only reason I call you the coffee guy is because I got the Thurrott cup.
Yeah.
Which is,
I drink espresso every morning, Leo.
I know.
I am a coffee guy. That's why there is a coffee
Mary
cup.
Jo, do you drink coffee or do you
I do.
Yeah.
Yep. I do.
So you're the kind of the speedball, right? You like in the morning you have the coffee, at the night you have the beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I lived in Seattle, I used to drink so much coffee.
You had to.
I mean, like 4 lattes and espressos a day, easily, if not more.
I won't let you cross the state line if you don't commit.
Yeah. I've cut way back on that.
You got to get the cheaper Canadian coffees.
Or Dunkin'. Dunkin'.
As I once said to my father, who was a Starbucks fiend, we're driving to get coffee, and we drove by a Dunkin' Donuts. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he says, I want to go get coffee. I'm like, "You don't drive by a Dunkin' Donuts. you go in the Dunkin' Donuts."
To if you call it coffee or coffee.
Yes. Right.
It comes down to that.
You go to espresso.
You go to Dunkin' for coffee.
Yeah.
No,
they make good
Starbucks
espresso drinks now.
Coffee is something else. I don't know what coffee is. Coffee's from the Bronx.
I think that's
New York
in
coffee.
New York.
Coffee's a flat white. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Enough of that. Mary Jo Foley, ZDNet,
Yes.
allaboutmicrosoft.com. Paul Thurrott, Thurrott.com. They're
Legendary.
authors. They're legendary. They're
No, I meant you. For getting
Prestige
back on
11.
track.
Yes, I am legendary. I am legend. The show is about Windows.
Yep.
I don't know.
Mostly.
In Boston. That's what we don't call it in Boston, by the way.
What? Oh, man, there's a new show. Okay, back off track. There's a new show on Showtime with Kevin Bacon. Yep. And he's doing a Boston accent. It's another one of them Boston shows. And guess who produced it? Ben Affleck and Matt Damon.
Sure. Does he do a decent Boston accent, or is it one of those terrible Boston accents?
I'm going to have to let you guys be the judge of that, not being from Dorchester.
Did you ever watch 30 Rock? That woman who was supposedly from Boston that was the girlfriend of...
but she was intentionally bad.
That's what I was thinking. It had to have been intentionally.
No, that was totally intentional, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
Let us talk. Okay, so before you get into this.
Yep.
I'm sitting in the studio a couple of weeks ago. We had a visitor from the East. I said, "Who do you work for?" He said, "Samsung." Mm-hmm. I said, "Oh, interesting." He said, "Before that, Nokia." I said, "Oh, okay. What are you in charge of?" He says, "Well, I don't want to get too detailed, but he worked for Samsung." Mm-hmm. He said, "Watch carefully, because I expect Microsoft and Samsung.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next Windows phone might be on a Samsung platform. He said.
He said that.
He said. Now, this seems to tie into this story. Get ready for Mandroid. I hope they don't call it that, by the way.
Kudos to Mary Jo for once again inventing another name.
Mandroid.
You know, there are people who give everyone and everything a nickname. That's me.
That's good. That's good.
Mandroid.
Everything doesn't have to have a code
Mandroid
name,
is Paul. Mandroid's awesome.
It's awesome. Come on.
Mandroid. I take it that's Microsoft Android?
That's, my name. Just like Credge, we get Mandroid. Mandroid and Credge.
It's better than Mansoft.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Okay, I'm just saying.
I think we can all agree to that.
Not good. Not good.
Samuel, you can come to this show anytime. I've got an audience. They are enjoying the show so far.
Yeah. Are they edging toward the exit
They're
yet?
credging towards the exit.
They're credging.
So what is Mandroid, Mary Jo?
Okay, so let's step back for a moment and talk about the origins of the story. So there was a Forbes report, and you know how both Paul and I feel about Forbes.
I don't trust Forbes either. But you know what?
No.
To be fair, sometimes Forbes is good, sometimes it's not. That's the problem.
Exactly.
Yes.
So if any veteran listeners are tuned in, the author of this report is Brooke Carruthers, who is a longtime tech journalist who actually has a pretty good track record.
CNET previously, right?
See, that's
Sorry?
CNET.
Wasn't he at CNET previously?
I think he was at one point. Yeah. So the way he tells the story is he calls up this company, IHS Markit, which is a market research company that specializes in mostly like supply side and distribution type stuff. Kind of like if Digitimes was good, this is like what this company is.
Wow,
I know, I'm insulting everyone now. I insulted Forbes.
You are
and
casting shade right and left today.
I am.
Wow,
But
Mary
he
Jo.
says he calls a person at IHS Markit, and this person volunteers that, hey, by the way, do you know Microsoft's making a device with two 9-inch screens and a 4:3 aspect ratio? And he cited as the source supply chain info. Then he says it's running Windows 10. It's going to have a certain Intel chip, the Lakefield codename chip. And, it's going to run Android apps. And this is a weird one. And the iCloud service.
Wait, what? Oh, jeez.
Yeah, this is part of all of the report, right?
I think we're mixing some stuff up here.
I think
we are too.
iCloud belongs in this. One of these things is not like the other.
No. The iCloud one is a weird kind of off-base thing. But also the Android app. Okay, by the way, the device he's describing is Centaurus.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I thought as soon as you said
to take a step back, we have theorized that Lite OS is essentially Microsoft's version of Chrome OS. Chrome OS does run Android apps. If they're building Edge on top of Chrome, Chromium, if they would build this Lite OS on top of Chromium OS, it would I would imagine running Android apps. It's a possibility. I mean, it's not as far-fetched, I guess, as maybe some people might think that sounds.
Right. I think the way I would characterize it is I think Microsoft is considering doing this. I wouldn't say it's baked. And the real question I have is how? How are they going to do it? Because we know they've in the past had a bridge that allowed them to take Android apps and bring them into the store.
Right.
And people I've talked to, some people I've talked to, I got to keep this really vague. Some people I've talked to say they have seen something that has Android apps in the store.
In the store.
Right.
In what store? In the online store? In the physical
store?
In
the Microsoft store on Windows 10.
Huh.
Okay. So just to say, again, sorry, just to add a little bit to what you just said, I know from my own sources at Microsoft that at the time they were building out the 4 bridges for Windows 10 developers.
Yep.
The iOS and the Android bridges were completely different. The iOS bridge is apparently still around, but the way that works is you're able to pull in code from an iOS project and then put it into a project for Windows 10. It doesn't bring the app over. And so it's just a way to bring code over. The way that the Android bridge, but the way the Android bridge worked was you could actually just bring an Android app over and it worked. Right. And the problem was at the time they were still pushing Windows Phone, And the running Android on Windows and on Windows Phone worked too well.
Too well.
And that was actually why they got rid of that.
What do you mean too well? What's too well?
Well, because they were pushing their own Windows, their Universal Windows Platform apps at the time. Mm-hmm. If you got the world's most popular app platform working on your platform, why would anyone write a Windows Store app? I mean,
right.
Yeah.
It was too good, so they had to get rid of it. And that team that was building that product was broken up, and they were scattered all over Microsoft. They were disbanded.
Oh, wow.
Astoria team.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a severe punishment. Oh, man. You are too good.
Do you remember, though, at the time, the reason they said they did away with the Android bridge was because if we have the iOS bridge, why do we need iOS bridge and Android bridge? All the apps that everybody wants are on both platforms. That was their justification.
If they were going to get rid of one, they should have gotten rid of the iOS one, because the iOS one was code.
Right. So the iOS bridge, like you said, it still exists, but it hasn't been updated in maybe a year, and nobody uses it. I don't think
it's probably seen very little.
No. Doesn't PWA supersede all of this, really?
I know. So that's the other question: why? Right.
Well, okay, but PWA would be part of this Lite OS platform, of course, but the Android app platform is humongous, and it's already there.
Right.
In other words, the idea, the big gripe against Windows RT, against Windows 10S mode, is apps. The apps that people expect to run out in the world that they download from the web would not work on these platforms. So Lite OS addresses this in a couple of ways. We are theorizing here. One is that it will, first of all, won't look like Windows, so you won't have that expectation that it runs Windows apps.
Right.
And two, if it runs Android apps, of course, now you've got this selection of the world's greatest collection of apps. And so that solves problems.
Yep. I don't think they'll... so some people asked me, do I think it'll be like BlueStacks, where it's like a player and an emulator kind of thing?
That is not the solution.
It's not going to be that, because that doesn't work, right? I mean, it works like, They want something where you go to the store and you get the app. That's what they want the experience to be.
You need the Play Store on there, which means you need to work with Google.
Yeah. So right. Well, by the way, that's the thing. So they could pay an Android license. They could get the Play Store app.
Yeah.
It would be a little confusing. I mean, right now in Windows, there's already a couple of different ways to get apps. This would be yet another way. But if you've used Chrome OS, that's how it works. There's a web app store, and then there's a Play Store, and the Play Store has the mobile apps in it.
Yeah.
A little weird, but it works.
It's very weird. But, and it also kind of makes me think about Windows Lite, which we've heard described as definitely based on Windows Core OS. Doesn't look anything like Windows, but supposed to be much easier to use and manage, and basically kind of a lightweight OS. Now we're talking about this OS having Win32 apps run in virtual machines or containerized somehow. That's how those will be available. And now we're talking about Android apps on this thing too. It sounds pretty complex, right?
Yeah, and that, by the way, so again, because the comparison has to be to Chrome OS. Chrome OS has kind of evolved in that way as well. It's a little weird when you run Android apps on Chrome OS, right? If they're not tailored in any way for that environment, they'll run like little phone-shaped windows.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you can stretch them out, and they stretch out like a phone app would stretch out on a tablet. Like they're kind of not that great looking. And so, honestly, it's probably okay for certain things. And then of course some apps are especially tailored for either tablets or Chrome OS specifically, and they stretch properly like an iPad app would. I mean, it's kind of an evolving situation. So, but you're right. There's a complexity to it. The selling point of Chrome OS is it's simple to use, simple to manage. Yeah. And this edition is a ton of functionality. It's super useful. It is the exact opposite of simple to use, simple to manage. It adds a tremendous amount of complexity.
Yeah.
But that's the trade-off.
It is, right. So the question both Paul and I have, I think, is there a possibility Microsoft does its own variant of Android? Like, does that somehow figure into the picture?
Yeah, so we should have talked about this before the show. So I will now. I'll just ask you this publicly.
Are you insane? Oh, sorry.
I know. Well,
No.
Mary Jo and I'm sorry. I at Build, I know I did, and I you might have. I've gotten information about the possibility that Microsoft will actually create its own Android-based phones. Did you hear anything about that?
I heard about that too, but I don't know. I just think that's so
stupid. So
yeah.
Why?
I agree, but I just want to at least put it out there because I don't know how this factors into any of this. So
I know.
Here's the problem with Microsoft. It's a ginormous company now, right? The market cap wise, it might literally be the biggest company in the world right now. They're not interested in little things. You know, if you're an up and coming go get 'em type guy at Microsoft or gal or whatever, and you want to do the next big thing, it's not going to be a little note taking app or a to do app or whatever. That's not $1 billion business, right? A phone business, however, could be $1 billion business, right? Because the $1 billion is in revenues. It's really easy to ramp up a fairly small hardware business that is in fact $1 billion business if you're a company the size of Microsoft. And now we have examples of companies doing this, like HMD did with the Nokia brand, right? There was enough of a fan base of Nokia phones to create this kind of new sort of company called Nokia. Well, it's HMD, but they make Nokia branded phones, and they're pretty, well regarded. They. Microsoft, without having to do the old Nokia way of making phones, having factories, manufacturing, supply chain, R&D, designers and everything, marketing, whatever, all over the world, now can do what Nokia is doing with HMD. They can just sign up with a third party. They can license Android from Google. They can put all of their software on it, the Microsoft Launcher, all the stuff, SwiftKey, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just a low risk thing. Will this thing ever be successful?
But the way I kind of think about it when I think about a Microsoft, if there ever were a Microsoft Android variant, I would think they would want to get rid of the Google Play Store, right, and the Google services. But then if they do that, will that thing ever succeed? No, right? Because then it's not even Android.
I think they have to just do that. And so when you think about it, I mean, I'll just rattle off a couple of names of companies that are doing this. In other words, this being they have a custom skin on top of Android. They have the Google Play Store there. They may or may not have their own store, right? Samsung, Huawei, OnePlus, right? Like everybody. This is, in fact, pretty much what everybody does, except for Google, of course, because Google owns Android. So, they could have their own thing in addition to the Play Store. I don't think they can get rid of the Play Store. Now, there are people who listen to this podcast. There are people who read Windows blogs and stuff who would be very excited by this. But I think we should acknowledge that on a global scale, out in the general public, I don't know. Interesting that Leo talked to someone from Samsung, because there was that Samsung deal with the I don't know if the S8 or S9 or whatever, where you bought it from the Microsoft store. It wasn't really a Microsoft edition,
right? But
they would download an OTA update in the store, and they would blast this stuff onto your phone for you.
Right.
The next step might be doing something like that, but out of the box.
Well, let's not forget Microsoft would have to find a manufacturing partner too, and you're not going to choose somebody. You might choose Nokia or HMB, but I think you want to choose somebody at scale who's not in China.
Yeah.
Samsung, not China. You're right. No, if only there was a company.
So Samsung is a logical
but from
choice.
The Far East.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if this ever happened I could see them maybe doing it on a PC more than I could see them doing a phone.
Oh yeah, well, so I'm sorry. This is a separate thing. I should say. Yeah. What I heard was that there is a faction within Microsoft that thinks they need to make this phone, and that there are enough.
Makes sense. This is what they're doing, right? This is
the Centaurus thing would be considered a PC type product.
Yeah, but
the phone would be something separate. It's kind of an ego thing. It's an ego product as well.
I don't know. I really feel like if they did this after how badly things ended with Windows Phone, and how they even actually made official recommendations to Windows Phone users saying, we're telling you to go iOS or Android, and we're telling you to get off our platform.
It would be Android, but that's the thing. This is Android. And now what they can recommend is their Android. And by the way, I don't think this is a good idea. I want to be really clear about this. I just know that there are parties that wish this to happen and could make it happen. They could make the argument that this is where you get the phone that's all set up for all of the EMS style, on-device management capabilities that a corporation might want. There's also the notion of the continuum, right? Samsung's done it. Microsoft did it with Windows Phone. Why can't Microsoft do it with Android? Of course they could.
Yeah.
And they could have a desktop experience as well. Yeah. What if that machine ultimately was a Windows Lite or a Lite OS machine in a phone that ran Android apps normally went in phone mode, but then blew out to a dockable PC type device? There are things I've heard, and then there are rumors like we're talking about, and when you kind of blend it all together, it's a bouillabaisse of nonsense, frankly. But I mean, it is. I feel like some of this is going to happen.
Yeah, I think we know for a fact they feel like they have a much tighter tie to Android than they do to iOS because the platform's not locked down, right? And so. If you look at your phone app, for example, all the things it can do with an Android device that it cannot do with an iOS device and maybe never will be able to do. So they already have this affinity for trying to tie themselves in with Android. And they actually have 150 apps built by Microsoft in the Google Play Store right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Right. That's a lot. Wow.
It's a lot. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not unprecedented that, it wouldn't be like, what? Wait, Microsoft's now coming in and thinking they can be a player in Android. They already kind of think they are a player in Android, just by virtue of tying themselves in with it.
Yeah, I think
but still,
they are a player on Android for sure.
They are, right?
I think Microsoft
but the
making a phone would be a
thing,
mistake.
I
think it's a mistake. I'm just saying we should at least acknowledge we heard about this.
Yeah. I've asked around.
As far as
I haven't been able to corroborate it or find anybody like anybody else beyond a couple of people who have heard about it. And so it makes me nervous because I don't want to give people false hope. You said,
I absolutely don't want to do that. But I mean, I guess the reason you probably wouldn't find a lot of corroboration for this is because it's actually happening at the highest level.
True.
And
I'd like to see them do a deal with an OEM if they really want to do an Android thing, like do a tie-up with Samsung, right? And let Samsung be the phone company and Microsoft just make sure all its stuff works really well.
Yeah.
They give it a brand
on that
or
device
something.
Specifically or whatever. Sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think that would be a huge can of worms. And not because, in the old days you would say, because that would hurt the Windows brand or hurt Windows market share. I don't think they care about that anymore.
They don't care about that at all.
No. I think it's more just confusion among their customer base if they do that about, what are you guys doing right now?
So, but the Centaurus thing, the notion of a dual screen device, a mobile computing device, right? Not a phone, but a mobile PC, essentially.
Yeah, like a tablet almost, right?
Yeah, it's, oh boy, I still have issues with this, and
I know.
Whether it's a folding display or a 2-screen display or whatever, it's weird because I think anyone can logically sort of understand that Microsoft needs to move past the legacy code base of Windows. It has been unsuccessful trying to do so in the past. And here we are, we're doing it again. But what is it's the same equation over and over again. I mean, so what's the point? What are we doing here? Like, what is the point of this?
Right.
And
it's part of the overall plan to make Microsoft a Linux house by the year 2025.
Yeah.
Oh, you laugh.
I know. No, I laugh nervously because
I would download and install Arch right now if I were you, Mary Jo. Start learning Lisp.
All about Arch. I like that. I'm going to get that domain.
Does Notepad run into wine? Is that one of the things that works?
It does. It does. It's really interesting, and it's funny that you heard the drum beat at the same time as I did. But we know Centaurus is real because they were showing that around, but we don't know.
They've shown it.
How Android
they've actually shown.
We don't know what the form is. We don't know what it runs. The Android thing is kind of a okay. I mean, it's one of those things like.
I'm just thinking, if you're a Microsoft user, as like our business department is, and so you're all in on Microsoft, you wish you had a Microsoft branded phone. It's fun, and you wouldn't care if it ran Android. You just want it to feel like it belongs in your ecosystem.
Maybe. I mean, but we used to have Exchange ActiveSync. Now we just have the standard mobile device management software. I mean, Office 365 works across iOS and Android fine. I'm not sure it matters anymore. I mean,
yeah, that's a good point. Really, this is the
Right.
cloud. The cloud strategy that Microsoft is pursuing is operating system agnostic. It doesn't care.
yeah.
Yeah.
So to say, well, we need to have
As long-
this
right.
operating system doesn't make a lot of sense.
If you can do information protection from within a Microsoft app, that's probably good enough. And I'm sure environments can set up these phones however they want. They could not allow the use of Gmail with corporate email, force the use of Microsoft Outlook, prevent screenshotting and blah blah blah, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they can do that stuff's all there. I don't know. It's not strictly necessary for Microsoft to have its own thing, and frankly, it might be counterproductive at this point for it to go down this path.
Yeah.
I wonder also, I mean, I can't ask him because he won't answer this, but would Panos Panay want to do this?
No.
He's shown a great ambivalence to things that were not coming from within his team.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also, he's all in on Windows. The guy's all in on
He's
Windows.
a Windows guy.
And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Would you say he's pumped about Windows?
Yeah.
I would say Panos is always pumped when it comes to Windows.
But people like Panos, okay, don't take this the wrong way, can get pumped about other things too.
True.
That's kind of
If he's told to, I bet he could.
the defining characteristic is pumped, not
Yeah.
about
Oh,
Windows.
2 years from now, when he's working at Facebook, he'll be pumped
Yeah.
about privacy
Yeah.
or something.
I mean, I don't mean that in any
No,
disparaging
I
way.
understand.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yep.
Yeah.
his job is to be an enthusiast about whatever he's doing.
It is. But so Panos is in charge of hardware, right? Like all. So if there were to be a device like this, it would have to be approved by
would have
him
to
or
go
come through
that's
him,
right.
you would assume.
But who
Right.
does he work for, right? Does he not work for Joe Belfiore in the Windows Experience Group?
Yeah,
no?
yeah, but also Rajesh Jha at the highest level, right?
Yeah, right. So it's that part of the company, right? So we
Right.
know that we just talked to Jeff Teeper last week. Or 2 weeks ago. That part of the company is talking to, or the Windows part of the company is talking to the hardware guys, and Surface are talking to the Office 365 guys, and they're kind of co-designing UIs that work across all of those products. I mean, do we really want to introduce imagine just the notion of an Android app popping its little head up and it's like a game of Duck Hunt. It's like, what the heck is that weird looking thing in the middle of the screen? It's an Android app.
Yeah.
It's intriguing to talk about. I don't see.
Yeah.
I think I don't see Microsoft doing another Windows phone, or even if it's running on Android. And
All I'm saying is there are people in that company
want it. I understand.
pretty damn high up
but I think
that want this to happen and
unless
could
it's
push it
Satya
through.
Nadella, I just think.
Well, but
that,
remember, so I mentioned the $1 billion business thing. That was purposeful. It would be very easy to create a phone business that was $1 billion business, and that would justify its existence.
what you
and,
could look at though is, okay, so we're in trade war with China, where almost all Android phones are made. I mean, the number one phone manufacturer is Samsung, but then it's Apple, and then it's Chinese companies.
Correct.
Maybe Microsoft looks at that and says, well, there's room for us.
Well, you know what they look
I don't
at.
think there is.
No,
I
you
don't
know
think
what?
there
You know why they think there's room for them? I think is because they believe that some people would be so happy not to have to be beholden to Google because of privacy and
Yes.
antitrust issues, right?
Yes.
That's what they're thinking. I think more than anything is this might be our little wedge to get in here and play up the fact that we're not Google.
American
Wedge.
company and
It's a good name.
what was it? Medge?
Wedge,
Wedge.
like Windows
Wedge.
Edge.
Windows Wedge. Yeah. Driving a wedge between you and your hardware.
Between you and Google.
You and Google. No, I think if Microsoft is doubling down on privacy, which they seem to be, they're looking at Apple. So what is the Apple strategy? Well, there's several. One is doubling down on privacy. The other is a hardware ecosystem play. The other is services. Microsoft's got services. They've got privacy. They don't have a hardware ecosystem. Maybe that's what they want to add.
I don't think they need one.
Me neither.
Well, it doesn't look like that's what they've been doing all along. All along they've been
No.
saying, look, we don't need an ecosystem or a hardware
No, they
ecosystem. We have a
divested themselves of.
Yeah.
They got rid of Nokia,
All of
right?
it.
They
All
dumped
of
that
it.
whole business.
Yes, that's why I've seen.
Well, that was a
There's a lot of things.
That was just a humongous business that didn't make any sense at all in 2015. It was a legacy infrastructure that.
Yeah, but what did Bill Gates says was his biggest mistake? Well, his number one mistake when he was running Microsoft.
He said different things at different times, as Mary Jo points out.
Most recently, he said losing out to Android.
Yeah. Now, I don't think I mean, that's 20 years ago that they lost out to, or 10 anyway, that they lost out to Android. It's not.
It's more than that. It's
a long time.
The truth is, Microsoft technically entered the mobile market with a non-traditional Windows platform in 1995 when they came out with Windows CE.
Right. Which
turned into palm-sized PC, turned into Pocket PC, turned into Windows Mobile.
And I had all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I did too.
Horrible.
And they competed with Palm and others in the PDA market in the late 90s, early 2000s. In 2002, they came up with the first phone-based version of the system. They were an early smartphone player. They competed with REM, which was BlackBerry, and they competed with Nokia and Motorola and whoever else. Every single one of those companies and others were all caught flat-footed by Apple. And there were only two companies that responded quickly to the iPhone in 2007. One of them was Palm, which ran out of money but made the WebOS and the Palm Pre. And the other one was Google, which was just about to release Android and said, "Oh, geez, let's do that over again." And they made it just like Android, just like the iPhone.
Yeah.
And they actually moved pretty quick to make that happen. And so that's kind of interesting. Google, Microsoft didn't move very quickly, but neither, by the way, did the market leaders, REM and Nokia primarily. So, I mean, claiming that should have been the time, for us to dominate. I mean, Microsoft didn't even copy the iPhone, which was its typical playbook, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it didn't move quickly. It didn't not pre-announce anything. Also part of its classic playbook. Yeah. The very notion that Microsoft could have become the next Android at that point is kind of ludicrous. But on a deeper level, and I've been going back and revisiting a bunch of ancient Microsoft and Windows history as part of a series I'll talk about later. But I'm reminded about how horrific that company was for all of its existence until the antitrust stuff. And, for me personally, as a technology enthusiast growing up in the 1980s, I couldn't stand Microsoft. I hated the company. I thought its products were terrible. I had no respect for them at all. I remember my wife got an IBM computer in the early 90s, and I asked my friend at the Amiga dealership to give me a copy of Windows so I could check it out because I was never going to pay for this piece of junk. And it was terrible. I thought it was a joke. And, people forget, Bill Gates' biggest mistake, you want to know what it really was? It was that this guy never invented anything. All he did was copy and steal from other people that did innovate, and then he just forced them out of the market. And that terribleness, that culture is what was pervasive at Microsoft for its entire ascendance to the top of the PC market. All those companies, all the great products and software that they sold is all long gone. All the real innovation in the industry is long dead. And that was the culture that he made. And that was his big mistake. His big mistake was he never made anything. He was just an aggressive business person.
Is there a category to come out and be like self-hating Windows journalists? Because you're in it.
Let me explain to you. The interesting thing is there is something that happens, and this happened to me. So when in the mid 1990s, I went back to school to become a programmer, and you could see where the world was going. It was going IBM, it was going PC, and it was going Windows. And Windows 3.1 was actually pretty good. My wife was involved in a company that had beta access to early versions of it was Word 6 and Excel 5, I think, and some other of those Office products. And those really were the first thing that turned me around. The Microsoft was finally making software that looked great. And then I got on the Windows 4 beta, which became Windows 95, and that was the first version of Windows. So I was like, oh, actually, this is actually pretty impressive. And then Windows NT, of course, and all that. So the products eventually kind of got there. And that kind of turned me around. It was okay to be part of this. But as far as people that idolize Bill Gates, I mean, yeah, it's wonderful. He's made all these billions and he's giving it all away to charity and everything. And that is fantastic. And I hope he solves the mosquito problem and the poop problem and whatever problems he's looking at. But, people today, I don't think understand like how awful he was and how terrible that company he made was. And his biggest mistake was not Windows Phone. That was the 117th mistake at the end of the road.
Wow.
That was
wow.
That's ridiculous.
Did you go and watch the video where he talks about Android being his biggest mistake? Because right before he says that, he talks about how bad the Microsoft culture was when he was running the company.
Wow.
He actually admits it. He's like, yeah, we were 20-somethings and we didn't care. We didn't have families, and people who have families, I said, I don't care. I don't have any sympathy for you. he admits it.
Look,
that's amazing.
Hard driving is fine. There were hackers in the truest sense and all that kind of stuff. The software is the terribleness of their software was not the problem. It was just how terrible they were to other people and other companies. And they, Go Computing comes out. We're going to invent, pen computing. Oh, we're putting it in Windows. Like they did that a million times, and businesses were just destroyed. All the greatest software products of the early 1990s are all long gone. Lotus 1-2-3, Ami Pro, Quattro Pro. All the Turbo Pascal, and name anything. You can't name any of them because no one remembers any of this stuff. It's all dead.
Right.
And it's
But to
depressing.
be fair, it all ran on the Windows platform, Mike. Without that solid platform developed.
Did you just say solid? Windows platform was terrible. You're talking about a platform that was like built on top of DOS. It's like
I want to welcome you to our new show, Amiga Weekly.
Yeah. I never knew. I didn't ever know how you felt about Windows. I didn't have any opinion about it because I just wrote about it as a journalist. Like I used their products just very tangentially.
So I listen for everything I just said. If I could do everything over again with regards to what I did technology-wise, I would have adopted DOS and then Windows at a much earlier age, and because knowing where the world went. Yeah. I wasted a lot of time and effort on platforms that were never going anywhere, on software applications that were never going to succeed, And I came to that very late. I mean, in the mid-'90s when Amiga or the Commodore went bankrupt and the Amiga kind of was disappearing, and I was going to school anyway and I needed a PC. A lot of those guys that were Amiga guys were like, oh, I'm going to go to OS2. OS2 is better than Windows. It's, I was like, guys, you're just making the same mistake again. Like, I 100% agree. OS2 was technically superior. It absolutely was. You knew this thing was doomed, and it was absolutely,
Yeah, but that video interview, you should go watch that because he basically admits everything you're saying there. And then he said, when I hit my 30s, Bill Gates is saying this, when I hit my 30s and then I got married and I had a kid and then I was like, oh, vacations, they're kind of cool. He even says, I used to only fly coach and eat at McDonald's. And then I started eating good food and I got my own jet. And I was like, what am I doing?
It is hard to get back to that. I just want to read you the quote that he said. This is really what set me off. This is how he described it. And what this shows me is that he's actually not learned any lessons at all. This really bothers me. He says Android is the standard phone platform, non-Apple phone platform. That was a natural thing for Microsoft to win. And it really is winner take all. If you're there with half as many apps or 90% as many apps, you're on your way to complete doom. There's room for exactly one non-Apple operating system. Oh my God. He literally is saying that what should have happened was Apple should have innovated everything with the iPhone, and then we should have stolen all of it, and we should have done to them what we did to them with Windows.
Mistake.
Are you telling me, like 25 years after Windows, you're saying that your biggest mistake was not doing it again? You're an.
No, that worked though, but it worked.
It did work.
That's terrible.
Terrible. You know what? Microsoft wouldn't have been Microsoft without a ruthless leader like Bill Gates at the helm. It wouldn't have.
Okay,
it wouldn't have. I'm not saying it was great that he was that way. I'm definitely not saying that, but I'm saying, he was a businessman and
he retarded
did
the
what he
growth
had
of
to
the
do.
industry to such a degree that Microsoft of today is finally embracing openness and diversity. We could have just had this all along. What if there were two great word processors from two different companies that were not Microsoft, two great databases, two great spreadsheets, two great graphics programs, two great programming environments? What if it was running all on top of OS2, and what if we went to different processor architectures at some other time? What if? Like the stuff like that the iPhone happened in 2007 is a miracle. What if it had happened in 1999? Because Microsoft wasn't slowing the whole industry down that whole time. But
don't you think Steve Jobs and whoever was heading IBM at the time were just as ruthless as Bill Gates? I do. Like they weren't nice people. They were all terrible too, right?
Yeah, they were all terrible. Yeah, they were all terrible in their own way, for sure.
And they
Steve
all
Jobs
wanted
was
to
absolutely
they all wanted
just
to
as rude.
dominate, right? That's what they all wanted to do, I feel like.
Well, IBM did dominate, and they screwed it up. And you can't name who the guy was because there were like 8 of them over that time period. John Akers was one, and Canavino was one. Who knows?
Yeah.
The names.
It was probably Canavino at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, they were all jerk-offs. But IBM. IBM did that thing where they're like, we have to come to market quick. Let's use all open parts and everything. And the only thing we're going to copyright is our BIOS. And then everyone stole it. Yeah. And then they were like, all right, so for the second one, what we're going to do is we're going to invent our own bus and we're going to charge licenses for it. And they lost the PC industry. It was over. Yeah. And what should the lesson of that have been? It should have been that open wins. Right? But we didn't learn that lesson. We spent the next 30 years spinning our wheels because of Microsoft. It's just...
Wow. I just think they did what I feel like they did what they thought they had to do to try to be winner take all, and that was their strategy. Was
why
winner
did they
take
have
all.
to take all? Why did they have to take all?
How have you gotten to be so open and inclusive suddenly?
No, what I'm remembering is the disdain I had for this company and those people at that time. Microsoft has evolved. No, Microsoft has evolved into a much better company, but before that, the thing that made Microsoft okay for me was they started creating good products. Yeah. Right? Like, not always, obviously, and there were missteps for sure, but Windows went from being a technical and design joke to being, okay, actually this is pretty good. And then of course with the NT underpinnings, like, okay, actually this is excellent. Yeah.
I guess, so for me, covering the industry at the time, I did, I covered, one of my main beat areas when I was kind of starting out on Microsoft was OS2 versus Windows. Like I covered that. I got to interview both sides, and I kind of loved it because I'm like, oh, they're both really evil. This is super fun to watch this. Yeah, this is great.
Okay, so IBM was a giant bureaucracy, but you got to look for all of their slowness and terribleness. They had a straight shot 16-bit everything long before Windows ever had it. They were a full 32-bit long before Windows ever was. They could run Windows and DOS apps and OS2 apps and Windows on top of OS2. I mean, technically speaking, 1992, 1994, that time period, OS2 was, it was light years ahead of what Windows was. Yep. And why didn't the best thing win? Because those guys couldn't market themselves out of a paper bag. They had no idea what they were doing. Terrible. Yeah. And Bill Gates was ruthless.
Yeah. Oh, but what he said before Android, what year was this when he said this? In 2013, he was asked what was his biggest mistake when he was at Microsoft, and he said WinFS. Do you remember that?
That's awesome.
I was like, wow, where did that come from? The WinFS.
By the way, that's interesting. So WinFS, this is the file system.
Yeah, Windows file system or future storage, right? It was during Cairo. Remember that?
This was the Cairo database-backed file system thing, right?
Yep. Object-oriented file store, blah, blah, blah. Yep.
Here's why that was always nonsense. And you can only say that today. I mean, I didn't think so at the time. This whole object-oriented future, I was all over this. I thought this was going to be the greatest thing in the world. Yeah. You can go up to Google Photos and you can type in something like Paris, actually Paris is cheap because there are metadata associated with location, so maybe that's how it knows it's Paris. You can type in something like the name and model of a car, and it will come up with pictures of those cars. When we were in Washington, D.C., this is my great example from today. I met a guy who owned a Porsche, and I took pitures of his car. Were you there for this? Yeah. And he came up and he saw me taking pictures of his car. I didn't know it was his car. And he's like, oh, do you like that kind of car? And we went into this whole kind of thing. I said, my dad owned like a 20-year-old predecessor to this. I went into Google Photos. I typed in the name of the car, turned my phone around and said, here's a picture of my dad's car from 1987. Right? That's why file systems are pointless. Because no one is, I know old people do this, but no one is now going to create folders and put files in folders and find things in some hierarchical sense. We can just find everything we need instantly. That whole file system thing, if they had implemented that, WinFS or whatever the object system from Cairo was called, it would be a historical footnote today. Who cares? Apple added, I don't know if it was called Sherlock or whatever they called it at the time, but they added that instant search thing to Tiger back in probably 2005. You hit space or control space, whatever it is, command space on a Mac, and you start typing, and everything just boop, comes up. you know?
Mm-hmm.
We're done. We don't need, for all the talk.
Yeah.
Bill Gates spent a decade talking about object-oriented programming and objects.
Information at your
file
fingertips.
systems,
Remember that?
Blah, 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 blah. And then we don't need any of it anymore. It's all gone.
Right.
And so that was his, so anyway, I guess, it's interesting he said that then. And I wonder if that wasn't a response to the stuff that happened first on the desktop and then later in the cloud, where the very notion of, like just arguing about fat versus, NTFS versus whatever, who cares?
Yeah. I think
it's
also
ludicrous.
related, though, to the Longhorn reset. I think when he talked about it, he said, that set us way back when we screwed up Longhorn, right? And then couldn't pull some of these concepts over the goal line. So, yeah.
I think Longhorn was just too top heavy. It was, they had reached some limit where the previous version, there were, 50, let's make up numbers, 50 groups of teams checking in code. The whole thing compiled. It was great. And then they got to Longhorn and it was all completely new and different. And now they had 500 teams. And it was like, oh, can't we? This isn't working. This system we have doesn't scale.
Yeah.
So have I ranted enough? I'm sorry.
I think if I had my gong handy, it would have been rung a couple times.
It would have been
I'm
dented.
stunned. That's like, okay, we're going to change the focus of this program.
No. Look, I'm not really into idol worship. For one thing, I'm not into celebrity.
No, this is what makes you a good journalist. Is you're a hard-hearted realist.
Yeah.
Well, but I'm also I like
bitch,
technology. I don't the people don't interest me.
No,
like when I read
right.
biographies
That's right.
of Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, I skip over the married Melinda, blah blah blah. Who cares? And then there's the thing about Windows. I want to read that. The personal stuff I couldn't care less.
So this is an interesting thing I've been thinking about lately, because there was a very good piece. I think it was in the Atlantic or the Journal. By was it Zeynep Tufekci? Was one of the great sociology writers, talking about Game of Thrones, but it has to do with technology. Hold on, I'll get there. The psychological versus the sociological. She said most novels are psychological. They're about the personalities, the people, and how they interact, and how this is this a bad man, a good man? What is he going to do? Is he a murderer?
Right.
Game of Thrones is about the sociology of it. The people were motes in a stream floating down this crazy river of politics. And what we liked about Game of Thrones, and that's why they could kill off so many of the main characters, it wasn't about those people.
It's just like the New England Patriots, Leo. The individuals do not matter.
They do not matter.
It's the pathological system.
But she says that's the problem with our understanding of technology these days, is we focus on the Mark Zuckerberg, the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates. We focus on those people as if that's what's really going on. It's not. It's what, and I think on our shows, all of the shows, we try to focus on not the people so much, but the trends. People are fascinating. We're humans. We love people.
Is there anyone listening to the show right now who picked up a copy of Business Week or Time Magazine or whatever it was in the 1990s and saw Bill Gates with his oversized old lady glasses on and was like, I want to be like that guy.
I bet there's a million people like that.
They want to be as rich as that guy. I don't know if they want to be that.
No, see, the right reaction is you're in a computer store and you look over your left and there's this obnoxious looking junk on the screen and you're like, what's that? Like, that's Windows. Like, yeah, that's terrible. I don't know what this, like, did someone throw colors into a blender? What's going on here?
I vividly remember that experience, but like you, I wasn't a Windows guy at first. I was a Mac guy.
Yeah.
Actually, I had Windows. I had DOS, and then Windows in 81. No, I guess still DOS. Then it was Mac, and then Windows. And then I remember looking at Windows 3.1 in 93 or 92 and saying, oh, this is not so bad.
Actually, I did have, Windows for Workgroups 3.1.
Yes, that one.
Which actually had all of the 32-bit underpinnings of Windows 95. You had to enable some of them. They weren't enabled by default. And the networking stuff, right? Was also an early thing for me where I was like, okay, this is still, Windows 3 and 3.1 actually looked pretty good. But this, you could tell there was something sophisticated going on here, where it was kind of taking control away from DOS. Like it used to rely on DOS for file access, et cetera, et cetera. You could see it trending in the right direction.
Yeah. And to be fair, Apple, my beloved, went through a horrible period in the 80s and I guess 90s when they They had the worst memory management ever. This is back in OS 9.
Memory management. Leo, you used to have to go, like, you could run Photoshop or another Mac app, and this is as late as 1990, the late 90s.
Yeah, right before they bought back Bill.
Yeah,
I mean,
before they got
Steve.
Next.
Yeah, but Next.
So you would go into one of the, about the program, and you would actually say, this is how much RAM I want this program to get.
Yeah.
That was memory management. You did it. So if you had like a 4 megabyte Mac, you'd be like, I need to run Photoshop. I'm going to get Photoshop 3 megabytes.
Yeah, because it had no garbage collection. It had zero memory management. Yeah. And it was that way for years, and it was horrible.
Sad Mac bombs is what you would get.
Horrible.
Remember?
And so I think you and I we're honest, and maybe we're less. I think what you just said was we're not so interested in the psychology of the people as we are in the technology and the trend and what's happening.
I mean,
by the way, that article was in Scientific American. The real reason fans hate the last season of Game of Thrones. Zainab Tufiki. Really interesting. It's really interesting, and it does kind of help you understand. I think. At least where to look when you're looking at what's going on in technology. It's not about Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research lately, so I've been reminded of things that I've kind of shut. This is the way I deal with things psychologically. I just shut them out. It's like it never happened, and so like having to kind of confront this stuff again has been very traumatic for me. But
wow,
he's in denial. He's in Windows denial.
I feel like also you both are much more technical than I am, but I used Windows as a normal person, and to me, I just assumed all operating systems were just like insufferable and horrible, and you just had to figure out how to use them.
Right.
That was how I looked at it.
Yeah. And that's somewhat true, by the way, Mary Jo. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
But if you're technical and you look at the underpinnings, there is but one true operating system. And that's Unix.
What are you going to say?
No, that's Unix.
Yeah. There we go. Okay.
And that's OS 10 is Unix. Android is Unix. Linux is Unix. It's the operating systems that embrace that style, I think, that are going to survive, frankly. And Windows
NT was created literally to destroy Unix.
Yeah.
Yep.
Literally to destroy Unix.
You guys know that, right?
Like how did that go?
Before I became the Microsoft reporter, I was a Unix reporter. Right. That was my whole job.
Right.
I covered Unix. That was my path. And the reason they made me the Microsoft reporter was when NT came out, they said, "Oh, Unix and NT, they're kind of the same thing. So you can now be the Microsoft reporter."
Right.
Nice.
Same thing.
As far as the PC goes, NT did beat Unix. I mean, it didn't beat it out of existence, which is maybe its greatest failure because that's what Microsoft did previously to all of its competitors. And by the time the server world started happening, they didn't defeat Unix there either. And of course, with the phone, I guess you could make that argument that
Android won. That's Linux. And,
I don't think it won because of Linux. It's hard.
It's a test. I think it did, and I can make a case for it, but I know it's not worth the energy. But what you could say is at least Linux was strong enough to survive Embrace it and Devour or Engulf and Destroy or whatever that Microsoft strategy used to be.
Embrace and
and actually,
actually,
Linux is an interesting example because Linux is an example of something like in the 90s when it started coming up of a very Microsoft-like thing, but open, right? But kind of scrappy and small and undercutting the dominant player and that kind of stuff. But what was missing from the whole Linux thing, even when there were commercial distributions and so forth, Red Hat and all that, was that ruthlessness stuff that I was just talking about. With
it's the opposite.
They didn't have to resort to those tactics, and that is notable and I think a positive. And not that there weren't acrimonious things going back and forth.
I would submit from a technical point of view that it's very simple. It's a technical difference in the monolithic kernel and the way Windows is designed versus a modular kernel and the way Linux is designed. And that technical difference in the long run, it took a while, has won out. And by the way, guess what Microsoft's doing?
Right.
Well, so by the way, what they've been doing since 2003, literally, is trying to take this thing they created and make it more modular.
Yeah.
That's been the story of...
Min-Win.
Well, Minwin's only the latest version. I mean, one of the big... For all of the lost technologies of Longhorn, one of the big technical pushes at the low level for that system was modularization. They wanted to make that thing more modular.
Yeah, they've seen the writing on the wall. They know.
I mean, NT is technically a microkernel. It's a really big one.
Yeah.
But it's...
Yep.
They have, and there's other historic reasons why Microsoft, this is a challenge, including the support for legacy, which I completely understand.
Yes.
It's a good business decision. And I think there are a lot of people who are very grateful for that. A lot of software still runs.
That was what hobbled Windows in the early days. Right. It had to be backward compatible with the 640K thing, with DOS, et cetera. And it was just not super sophisticated. In fact, it technically never really was.
It killed Intel too, by the way. x86 is backwards compatible with 640K of RAM.
I know, it's crazy.
And I honestly think that's what's killing Intel. It's why Intel can't innovate.
Yeah, right. That's an interesting point.
I think we're seeing this play out. I mean, it's in slow motion, but I think we're seeing this play out.
No one technically should ever need more than 640K, but
I've heard that somewhere.
He never said it, and he says that again and again. I never said that, please.
It's the most famous non-quote of all time.
I didn't say that.
Come on, you said it.
And then, Mary Jo, you pointed out in the show notes here that it's not the first time Bill has admitted to his biggest mistake.
Yeah, right. The WinFS thing, right?
Yeah.
And so you know what's funny? It kind of makes me think about his thought process and how he started thinking about the Android thing now, because I've never seen him mention this before.
Right.
And suddenly he comes out with Android, right? And I'm like,
by the way, a healthy way to look at the market today, and I think we brought this up before in the show, is that if you go back to Microsoft roots, before Microsoft was making platforms, they started off with programming languages, which they put on every single microcomputer made to God. Yep. And then they started working on productivity applications as well, which they did the same thing. Where we are today, because they didn't have the platform, right? So once they had a platform, they kind of tunneled everything through that one platform. But now that they don't control the major computing platform on Earth, they're kind of back to their roots. Not making programming languages, but by making productivity applications or what the modern version of those things that run on other platforms. I mean, it is the healthier, more heterogeneous, more open market that I think would have happened earlier if it wasn't for Microsoft. That was kind of my point earlier about Gates.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I get it.
But I also think we're in different times too, and it's hard to kind of say what's happening now could have happened before, just because of the difference.
Hindsight is 2020. I mean, this is easy
the thing is, it could have happened. The problem was there were people that had giant personalities in the computer, like Philippe Kahn or whatever, and I'm sure there were people that were just as combative and competitive as he was. But the Bill Gates Microsoft thing was a perfect storm. That led to antitrust. I mean, that was the end game. I mean, 20 years to dominance, 10 years lost in the wilderness, the lost decade, and then the iPhone happened. And I'm just saying, the iPhone happened in the wake of all that stuff. Imagine if Microsoft hadn't happened. All I'm suggesting is this stuff could have happened earlier. We were talking about pen computing in 1990.
Think about the iPhone, though. That was a pretty unpredictable turn.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like, whoa, what happened?
They got a lot right all at once.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody inside of Microsoft was thinking, oh, watch out, here comes Apple with that iPhone thing. There was nobody.
Once they knew what it was, no one was saying.
Yeah, even then.
No, they laughed about it. Right?
No, but you got to understand, when you're RIM or your BlackBerry or your Microsoft, whatever, you are this gigantic, successful company. You've been doing something right for a long time.
Right.
And this other company comes out with this new thing that's different, Your reaction is, guys, we're fine. We've got this awesome thing. Like, you don't even see history smacking you in the face after it happened.
No, there's zero incentive to look at it, to think about it. Zero.
Like, imagine Microsoft going to its shareholders or RIM or BlackBerry, whatever, and saying, hey, guys, I know we've done this thing super successful for like 20 years, but this other thing happened. And I'm thinking, let's risk the whole business. And because you never know, I think it might be big.
And I'm sure somebody did that. We'll never know his name.
No one in a position of power did it, because you can't. It's not possible to do it. Like I said, Palm did it because they were failing and they were running out of money. They were failing. They were failing. And Google did it. They hadn't entered the market yet. Those were the only ones. Everyone else was like, let's just copy them.
Here's one more kind of philosophical question, then we'll get back to the nitty gritty. But do you think there's something like the iPhone sitting out there right now that no one expects, no one's looking for, that is going to change the world? Do you think something is that still possible?
Yeah,
I think it is.
Yeah.
Because when HoloLens came out, I feel like that kind of came out of nowhere too. We were really surprised about it. And
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I would call it an iPhone level.
No, but
yeah,
still, I think there's the possibility of coming out with something really surprising that is taking a direction that other people didn't think about. Because people were thinking about VR, but I don't feel like people were thinking about AR when they started talking about the HoloLens.
Right. Yeah, I mean, actually, like as I think back to that original announcement, I remember as it was building up, I was thinking they're going to do some sort of virtual reality thing, but they're going to have projectors all around the room, and they're going to project some virtual thing on the stage. It'd be like the thing where you're talking, standing to a person that's not really like they're in the holodeck or something.
We'd seen a rumor like that, or we'd seen a thing like that, right, with gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that's what we were going to see. That's what I thought that was going to be. And then when they put the helmet on, I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's just like a VR helmet. Like, it wasn't exactly what I thought. I mean, look, the first gen's always going to be. It's like looking at a Model A and comparing it to a Tesla. You know, the version of this that's going to make sense is it's going to be like a contact lens or an embedded thing in your brain or whatever. I mean, it will be so sophisticated compared to this plastic helmet.
We're like at the Xerox Star era. You know, and the iPhone is somewhere in the. Yeah. I mean, really, the Xerox Star, Apple saw it, made the Lisa, then the Macintosh. That was the early 80s. You know, 20 years later, not even that, 15 years later. No, I guess 25 years later, they made iPhone. iPhone now is 12 years old, so maybe we're 13 years off from.
Yeah, the next whatever. Cold
I think that's
fusion
about right. Well, I don't think I think you're right. I think it might be spectacles or contacts. There might be some.
Yeah.
I mean, some people think it's quantum computing, right? Like that's.
Okay. Yeah, no, right. Actually, that's a good point.
If that ever happened, that would do that. I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
Or didn't it already happen, Leo? So I think that
it did, but then the cat died, and no one knows.
Exactly. Thank you. So. It's funny you said that because I used that as a graphic on one of my articles this week. When my son was really small, like 3 or 4 or something, he said, someone should invent a thing where you can ask it any question and we'll just give you the answer. I was like, well, sorry to tell you this, but that thing already exists, Google search, whatever. And quantum computing is kind of the next frontier for that kind of a thing. And now it's it will enable us to figure things out in real time rather than have to wait. It's like the computer in what was it? Not Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Where they sit there and they wait for the answer for however many years or whatever it was, and it comes back and it's like 42. Now we'll get that answer very quickly. I think quantum computing absolutely will change everything. That's what will enable great leaps forward that we can't imagine today.
And I guess it's the case that in the early 2000s, the seeds of what was going to become the iPhone were there. If you just knew, you could see it in hindsight, but if you knew at the time, I remember, in fact, there's a video of me holding up a Newton.
Yeah, sure.
Saying at some point you're going to have this, it's going to be smaller and it's going to be always on the internet. And that's going to be revolutionary. And that was probably, I said that probably 94, 93.
I was going to say the early 90s for sure. Yeah. Yep.
So it wasn't that those seeds weren't there. It's just that no company.
Well, the technology wasn't there.
Yeah, no company kind of said, "Okay, that's where we're going to aim."
You need people who do think different, Lee. You do. To say it correctly, and and to put things together in ways that others didn't or can't. You got to remember when Microsoft came out with their first version of a PDA. It had a desktop. It had a start button. When you hit the button, the menu came down. It was like, this was like a completely, like, what is wrong? Like, what on earth, would make you make something like that? Because you see everything through this Windows colored lens.
I mean, a phone with a start
Apple
menu.
Made the iPhone,
really, they
didn't make the iPhone look like there's a dock sort of. It's not exact, but as far as that springboard UI, they have completely different. Like they looked at this thing and said, look, it has to have a simple, obvious, intuitive UI. It can't look like Mac OS 10.
And again, I don't want to do the great founder thing, but it is true that if Steve Jobs hadn't thrown a tantrum every time somebody showed him something that didn't match his vision of it, we probably wouldn't have the iPhone. I mean, this guy
No, that's
brute
yeah. No, it
strength
needed him.
forced the
It
iPhone
needed
to
a
happen.
shepherd for that. But
Yeah.
but it also relied on a lot of people making making real breakthroughs
Oh,
on their own.
absolutely.
The keyboard stuff is
he didn't
was
invent
genius.
anything.
Right. No, but I mean, it needed all of that to happen. Like all of it had to happen right. If they hadn't gotten autocorrect and auto, typing on glass right, that product might not have been released.
But we should remind ourselves that there was no cut and paste in the first iPhone. There was no app
That's
store.
right.
There was no.
wow.
There was no app store. There was no enterprise support.
It
There was all kinds of
It
things
was missing
missing, but-
huge chunks of functionality.
Yeah.
So, and much like you would say, well, HoloLens.
Or if you're familiar with like the original Mac, Bill Atkinson came back from that visit to Xerox PARC and thought he had seen some things he didn't see, and he made them happen on the Mac. He just invented them.
That's so famous. That's such a great story.
You need a genius to to make that stuff
Only
happen.
recently, the folks at Xerox PARC said, "Yeah, we didn't have that. We didn't know that."
Yeah, it was like overlapping windows where it
He
would actually
thought
maintain
he
the
saw
state of
us
the window.
do that. We
He
were
thought he
faking
saw
it.
that. It's like, no, we didn't do that.
Wow.
We never figured that out.
And incidentally, and then we got to stop doing this. This is too much fun for me. But incidentally, that whole idea of overlapping windows was very hard to do. That's why Xerox PARC didn't do it. We've been down that tunnel ever since, including Windows, and now Apple's abandoning it, saying, "Yeah, that's actually really not the metaphor." And the iPad and iPad OS, no more overlapping windows. That was a bad idea. That whole notion.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
Right. Yeah,
All right, I want to take a
right.
break.
All we need is Snap.
Snap is the solution.
That's all we need.
If only people knew it existed.
This is like a special all rant episode of Windows Weekly. I
It
don't know what
kind of
happened.
is.
We're going to get back to OneDrive, modern apps, Windows 10, Surface Book 2, all of that stuff. But first, a word from our sponsor. We'll let Paul cool off just for a little bit. Maybe what we need to do is get Paul a little bunny,
Yeah, that
bunny
helps.
bear suit. He can just wear that suit, and everything will be okay. Our show today brought to you by Capterra. Capterra is a really good example of a product that you need that you never heard of. People are I feel so bad. There's so many people out there, and we know this because of all the malware and all the complaints that Windows XP is not being supported, but I need my XP because I'll tell you why. Mary Jo knows this. There's line of business software out there that still won't run on anything that doesn't have active desktop or doesn't have IE8 or doesn't have Windows XP. There's lots of it. The entire subway system of New York City is running on OS2 Warp. This is not an acceptable situation for a lot of reasons. If you're suffering in your business because the boss got his nephew Joey to write a program, was Joey is in high school. Joey, by the way, is 48 and living in Muncie now, and the software that's never been updated, and you're still using it. There's a solution: Capterra, a directory of modern, well-done software. Some of it's on your computer, some of it's in the cloud, but all of it will get business done in a modern way. And this is the best directory ever. Over 700 categories of software, the big names, CRM, IT project management, e-commerce, link management tools, web conferencing, but also thousands and thousands and thousands of programs, some of them in very specific niches like veterinary office management or dog groomer software. If you're in a business, no matter what the business is, and you have software that is not up to date, go to capterra.com/windows. Choose a category, narrow it. You'll go, wow, there's 24 dog grooming programs out there. I had no idea. Then narrow it down. You can narrow by product rating, number of seats, deployment, whether you can make appointments with it, whatever features you like. You can set up a page and compare side by side up to 4 programs at once. But the best part, they even show you a list of related categories so you can get more options. But the best part of Capterra is the reviews. This is such an active site. Millions of people use it every month. I can't remember the exact number. I think it's millions a month. But here's the number that counts. They have 925,000 reviews and 1,000 new reviews every single day. Because I think people are so appreciative that when they find software and they use it on Capterra, they put a review up. They want others to know, which means when you're looking for software, you go there, you look at those reviews. They're always very carefully vetted by Capterra. They're real users, and you'll really get a sense, is this going to do what I want it to do? Is this going to live up to its promises? No matter what kind of software your business needs, Capterra makes it easy to discover the right solution fast. And, if you do find something and you use it, leave a review. Pay it forward. That's all they ask. Because Capterra is absolutely free. There's no charge at all. Check out Capterra's free website, Capterra, Capterra, Capterra.com/Windows, and join the millions of people using Capterra to find the right tools for their business. Suffer no more. Go out and get the right software for yourself. Capterra.com/Windows. Software selection simplified at Capterra. Paul Thurrott, Mary Jo Foley. The philosophy department is closed.
You know what else I hate about Bill Gates?
No, gong.
Let's talk about, I don't know, OneDrive. This is just going to get Paul mad again, is it?
Oh,
No, I
OneDrive.
think he's going to like this.
Okay.
He might like this.
What's new with OneDrive?
This is about OneDrive Consumer, OneDrive Personal, not the business version.
Yeah.
So this week, Microsoft added some new storage options for that. So if you're already a OneDrive Personal user who pays $2 a month for 50 gigs of storage, Microsoft's just going to give you another 50 gigs for no additional cost. So you're going to have 100 for the same $2 a month. That's good news.
Nice.
If you're an Office 365 consumer subscriber, so if you have Office 365 Home or Personal, you finally can buy more storage.
They used to say 1 terabyte was infinite storage.
Yep.
No, it's not.
No. Some people want more.
Nobody will ever need more than 1 terabyte of storage.
Exactly.
I
Who said
actually
that?
pay $100 a year for 2 terabytes of Google Drive.
Yeah.
I'll probably never even come close to using that, but for $100, why not?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, Microsoft's a little more expensive than that.
How much?
It's going to be they're letting you add in 200 gig increments for $2 additional per month, up to an additional terabyte, so that you get 2 terabytes for $10 a month. So
Well, that's not much
their plan
more.
is not much more, 120, right?
Yeah.
The problem is they don't have an annual charge, which would save money.
They don't.
So on the Google side, it's $99 a year or $10 a month.
Yeah, same price, but if you buy a year, it's cheaper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
which
no
is
year
how it should.
price.
I'm hoping they get there.
They'll do that.
Yeah, and you're never. Well, I shouldn't say never. Microsoft is not thinking about letting you go beyond the 2 terabytes. They're not talking about adding anything beyond that right now.
Because that's
as
an
a paid
enterprise.
option.
Now you're talking enterprise if you need more than that, right?
But
Yeah.
no one will ever need more than 2 terabytes of file storage.
And the other thing they are adding to OneDrive Personal is this new thing called Personal Vault. So this is a protected area inside of OneDrive where you have to use 2-factor authentication to have access to it. So you can use fingerprint, face, PIN, the Microsoft Authenticator app, or have a code sent to you by email or SMS. And it lets you access this very secure area inside OneDrive. And why would people want that? My thoughts went one direction, but Microsoft said, what if you wanted to take a picture of your driver's license and you wanted to save it in OneDrive, and you felt a little nervous about doing that because it would be saved to your camera roll, and who knows who could get their hands on it. This lets you circumvent the camera roll, take a picture with your phone, and save it right into the OneDrive Personal Vault.
Okay, but I have a question.
Yes.
But I have the same question.
So go ahead and you ask first, then, Paul.
Okay.
I
Well,
may
you
not
go
know
first.
the
How
answer to
secure?
either
Well,
question.
really, does Microsoft have access to it? So, for instance, I store my driver's license, social security numbers, and stuff in my password vault, LastPass, which LastPass does not have access to. It's 2-factor backed up, but most importantly, it's encrypted with only my knowledge. Nobody else has the password. Generally speaking, I know this is the case for the rest of OneDrive and iCloud and Google Drive and everything else, Dropbox. The company does have access to it.
Yep.
Yep.
So
I
my
would
question
assume
was
Microsoft
different.
does.
Yeah. So the only difference is 2-factor support. But can you use 2-factor with OneDrive and can't you?
In all of those places.
That was my question. Why isn't all of OneDrive this
It
secure?
is, though. I have all my Microsoft accounts are secured by the Microsoft Authenticator. So doesn't that mean it's 2-factor?
Well,
Yes.
but you're.
It sounds so like this area sounds like it has an additional level of security.
So,
Well, that's
let me
kinda what I'm
speculate what this
wondering.
might. It might actually mean that it's encrypted against Microsoft as well. Maybe this is
maybe.
satisfying both of our questions.
that
right?
would be a big deal.
I don't know the answer to that.
And
but
honestly, without
this would be the Apple defense where you're like, I'd love to give you the information in this guy's OneDrive, Mr. Government, but unfortunately it's encrypted with our new private vault feature or whatever it's called.
Right. So here's what it says. On Windows 10 PCs, your personal vault files will sync to a BitLocker encrypted area of your local hard drive.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Good. BitLocker, only you have the key to BitLocker. Microsoft can unlock BitLocker.
Right.
But I also wonder, why isn't every computer just BitLocker encrypted to begin with?
Well, mine is, of course. If you're using an SSD, you should use full disk encryption.
Yep.
Of course, Windows Home,
it says,
you can't do it.
on mobile devices, we recommend you enable encryption on your iOS or Android device.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay.
So, in other words, it's syncing. It's not sync. Is it sync? Is it syncing to OneDrive?
It's syncing to the cloud, you're asking?
It is.
Yes, it is. Yep.
So it seems like if you cared about this, you could probably put everything in the private vault.
You can. Everything up to your storage limit, you can do that. Yep.
Oh, okay.
So
that's fine.
One of the issues with, and this is why generally you don't have this kind of trust no one encryption, is you can't dedupe. If the company that's storing this at Dropbox or OneDrive or iCloud or whatever can't see the content, then it's just a blob to them.
That's right.
They can't dedupe. They can't. There's all sorts of stuff they
right.
can't do.
That's
You
right.
can't search. So all of the stuff has to be done on a device, not on the cloud. And that usually means a severe limitation in the number of features. There's only one that I know of, cloud service that does this, that does end-to-end encryption, and that's Spider Oak. And it's fairly limited because of that.
Right.
You know, for one thing, Microsoft wants to dedupe. Like, for instance, if I put my music in there, right, in OneDrive, which we do, right, it shouldn't have to have a copy of that, you know, Ariana Grande song for everybody who has it. They
It's
have one
also like a
copy.
compression type thing too, right? If you don't know what the file type is, the backing this thing up is just, like you said, it's just a blob. You can't do anything with it.
So, exactly. So, that's what I'm wondering. Unless they explicitly say, and we do not have access to it, I'm guessing
They didn't say that.
Yeah.
So this feature is still forthcoming. I suspect
it is.
we will learn more about it before they actually make it available.
Agree. They're first going to start testing it, by the way, in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And then everybody will get, everybody else will get it before the end of the year.
Is it a time zone issue?
All right, I just got to point out, Australia has a law that prevents end-to-end encryption.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So, yeah, in Australia, any provider is required, upon pain of severe penalty, to provide an unencrypted version of the communication or data. Period. So if they are offering in Australia, then it guarantees it's not end-to-end encryption. That's really a strange choice.
You know, they have tested things in those 3 countries first before. Specifically, the Microsoft Managed Desktop tested in those first 3 countries before.
Harry Potter Wizards Unite was tested there first.
It was because of time zone, you said, or no? You didn't say that.
No, that was a joke.
Australia? No, it's not a joke. Australia, New Zealand.
No. I mean, the time zone was a joke. Remember they used to launch Windows first in Australia and New Zealand because of the time zones.
Oh yeah, but we're first like by an hour. Yeah.
It might be because it's a biggish market, but not as big as saying like we're going to go to U.S.
It's manageable.
You know.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe.
But I just want to point out, they all have the Queen on their money.
Yeah, but we have that triangle eye thing.
Ooh, what does that mean?
Right? The Masons,
Illuminati. That's interesting. Yeah, no, I think there's technical reasons why companies do that.
Yeah.
It's just a coincidence they're all Commonwealth nations.
Or is it?
Right.
Okay, I think this is good. Look, any additional security is
all these
good.
things are good.
Yeah.
Yep.
I read there was an article on Medium by a security guru saying, "Don't think a password manager is the be-all and end-all." And I thought, dude, just shut up. Just shut up. We're having enough trouble getting people to do this. Don't start throwing FUD around. Yeah, technically you're right, but geez Louise. All right. Modern. Let's get modern.
Yeah, I hate
thought
modern.
modern was dead. Is modern?
Modern's a terrible name.
This will be Mary Jo's rant. I hate modern.
I hate things being called modern.
Right.
I don't
love
like
how that came
name.
out.
Nothing's
I hate
modern forever.
I like horses. I don't need a car.
I don't like comedy. I don't like
comedy.
I don't.
I
hate
do
comedy.
like Mandroid, and I like Credge, and I like IPAs. That's who I am.
Never going to
Notepad.
change.
Yeah, this is a Credge story, by the way. Credge is now available to testers who are willing to be in the Canary channel on Windows 7, 8, and 8.1. A lot of people ask, why are they bringing this to Windows 7? Because Windows 7 is going to no longer be supported as of January 14th, 2020. There is a very good reason they're doing this. Well, there are a few reasons. One is a lot of people are going to pay for extended security updates who are on Windows 7, and they are hoping they will want to use Credge. Also, a lot of people buy Windows 10 and downgrade it to Windows 7 in their corporations. Those people also, Microsoft is hoping, will want to run Credge. But mostly, I think they did this because of developers. Developers don't want to have to test their apps in multiple different kinds of browsers. And so Microsoft's trying to make this easy on developers and say, we're just going to put Credge everywhere. Credge everywhere. Credge for life. Yeah. Go Credge.
Credgeeverywhere.com.
Can I say
Mary
Credge
Jo's
more?
new website.
Can I say Credge anymore? Because every
You're
time I say it
incredulous.
on this show, I get hate mail for people who said, stop saying Credge, you're hurting the brand.
I wonder how those people are going to feel about Mandroid.
Yeah, they're going to love it. Going to love it. And you said there's a dark mode. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't even. So I use the Canary version, which is updated every day. So actually, this kind of happened, and I didn't even notice it. But apparently, on the dev version, which is updated once a week, they got the improvements to dark mode the other day, a couple of days ago, or yesterday. But I'm living on the real Edge, or I guess as you would say, the real Credge, the daily Credge.
The Credge version of WebView is not as powerful as the EdgeHTML version. Would you?
Yep, that's nonsense words. So let me explain.
Explain to me, Paul. Explain.
Microsoft has always made an embeddable version of their web technology available to developers so that you can add it to your apps. And in the new versions or whatever of Office, they use WebView as a way to write Office extensions. But because Microsoft has adopted Chromium for Edge, they're now moving to a new version of WebView that's based on Chromium, not on EdgeHTML. There are all kinds of advantages to that. We've already talked about all that stuff. But for developers who are using the embeddable WebView, actually there's a lot of disadvantages. WebView 2, which is the version based on Chromium, doesn't have all of the features that were available in Edge in the original WebView, and it probably never will, frankly. And a lot of them have to do with native Windows 10 features that are just never going to be brought to the web. It's just the nature of the thing. And so over time, that will probably improve. But the way this will work, remember we were talking about, I think we were talking about this probably back at Build. There are developers who have written store apps that use this control. And will they have to just move forward to the Chrome-based version of WebView? And the answer is no, because it's not going to do everything that their old app was doing with the old version of the control. So they're going to continue to maintain the EdgeHTML version of WebView. App developers will be able to use that going forward. There'll also be a versioning change that occurs going forward where, because Credge will be updated so frequently, you'll be able to embed a specific version of the WebView, and it will be platform agnostic. It won't matter that you're on Windows 10 version, whatever. You'll still be able to use the the one that used to come with Windows 10 version, whatever. So this is a little. If you're a developer and you're interested in using web technology and use WebView specifically, this is something you probably already know about. But just so people know, like there is this one kind of for all of the awesome stuff that goes along with going forward to Chromium. There is this one little dark area that's not so great if you're a developer. If that makes sense.
No,
Yeah.
but that's fine. I don't want to
All right.
go any deeper.
I tried. I don't know.
Yeah. Should I download this Windows terminal? This is
You should. It is.
You
awesome.
totally should.
Is it? You can tell
Yeah,
the difference.
it's awesome.
Tell me what's new. What's different?
It looks awesome. Let me bring it up. Hold on.
So it's
Tabs.
using.
There are
using,
tabs.
There's tabs. That's nice. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
using
Yep.
the GPU.
So it's-
is it only
No, but
for
it's-
PowerShell or is
No,
it?
that's what's awesome about it. So it's a single terminal for everything. So you can create new tabs. You can mix and match PowerShell and the
Ooh,
command prompt.
Okay, I do like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yep. Go back and forth. Each of them can have their own configuration. This is what you'll like the most. Although I have to think they're going to change this over time. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe not. So you were just talking about how Unix took over the world and NT, all that stuff.
Yep.
This thing uses a text-based. It's a JSON file for settings.
Oh, nice.
So it looks like XML or whatever.
Yeah.
And so when you go, there's no settings interface right now. Again, I think this is going to change. It actually brings up the JSON file. In my case, in Visual Studio, I guess it would come up in Notepad or whatever. And you actually hand edit a text file to change the settings.
Yeah.
So if you want to change the font,
this is not at all uncommon in like Atom and what is the GitHub editor? Maybe it's Atom and Sublime. And
actually, Visual Studio Code originally
VS
did this.
Code. That's right. Yeah.
And I don't know if they ever.
I wonder if
did
this
they
is an
change that?
Electron app because I think that's an Electron-y thing to do.
It has awesome translucency.
You
there's
know
a
what?
weirdness
I
to it.
like that. Honestly, I like that in a
I know, I
terminal.
do
I like
too.
to see the
I know.
desktop a little bit underneath.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm watching you through it now. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like having Vaseline over the webcam lens.
I'm
It's
downloading
nice.
it now. It's only 5 megabytes, so I don't know if it is Electron. That's pretty small.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's a preview. It's not the final,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's in the
Windows
store.
Terminal preview. And it's in the store, which
Yep.
is cool. Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. It's kind of a goofy thing to say about a terminal app, but it's
No, I like a terminal, and this is again another. I think this is Microsoft saying, "Yeah, we understand. There's a group of people, mostly developers, who really have a different expectations. They lived in the Unix world. If we could, and I guess I could do LSW in this too, right? I could have Bash running or whatever.
Oh, that's a good question. So I don't have. I bet you can. Of course, it's a single. Yeah, I think that's the point.
Right.
You could have 3. You could have
that's-
as many tabs as you
that's
want, but they could be
critical.
anything you want.
That's critical because people have, it's so funny. You'll see this on Reddit. So what's the best terminal for Arch? And then there'll be 18 different recommendations because everybody's got their little favorite, terminal. And that's important. That's the thing you kind of live in. So I understand that. Neat.
I think you're going to like this thing a lot.
I just downloaded it, and I will.
Yeah.
I will.
Give it a whirl. Give it a
I
whirl.
expect
Give
to
it a
hear
whirl.
your childish glee cry when you see it. Yeah.
Well, honestly,
It's
the
pretty
command,
cool.
the command, whatever that app is pretty
Command
awful.
prompt, right.
I mean,
Oh,
it's
command.
not CMD. It's pretty bad. So anything would be better. And then
Anything would be
anything
better.
would be better. And a lot of people are using Putty or stuff like that. Sigwin's got some terminals, and it's early preview build. This very, very early. It says very early preview build. Okay.
Yeah, it's missing accessibility features is one of the reasons they're
Okay.
really highlighting that it's very early.
Yeah, we they have actually an ADA requirement to make sure it's accessible. So, and that's certainly their corporate goals. So.
Right.
Terminal. So I'm gonna have to stop typing CMD to get my command prompt. Ooh. Try the new cross-platform PowerShell.
I know. I like that the first thing that comes up is an ad for the PowerShell you're not using.
Okay.
It's okay. Go up to the little arrow thing, start a command prompt.
Oh yeah. Settings. Yeah. Okay, and then we get this nice JSON file. It's taking a while to open because it has to open it in Visual Studio Code.
Exactly.
I love it. And you can launch.
It's kind of old school, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well, actually, I did install a terminal app. I can't remember what it was using Chocolatey for WSL. So look at that, profiles.json.
Yep.
Wow, look at that. Yeah, and I don't mind this. I think most programmers are very comfortable with this. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, but do the tabs thing. So, like, open a command prompt tab. I don't know if you have WSL on there, but I believe if you have that will work as well.
I unfortunately don't because I am using. This is the Surface Go, and it's Windows Home.
Yeah, just close that. Or
Yeah. So
minimize it or whatever.
That's this. This is the. I thought that was the terminal.
Yeah.
There's the pretty little terminal there. This is the little down thing. The tab is the plus, right? So
that just does the same. That'll do another PowerShell.
Yeah. Command is Control-Shift-2. There you go.
Yeah.
Or go back Control-Shift-1 to PowerShell. That's nice. Settings. Okay, good. And here's the about. I guess I'll have to go in settings to change the transparency. There's 0.02. Wow, it's very early.
Oh, you're not seeing. Make it a window. I wonder if that's why. Because I'm getting some good transparency. Maybe I did change it.
Yeah, you must have changed the settings.
Or maybe it's because your Surface Go is so anemic.
Is it? No
I'm surprised it doesn't.
Don't get him going on that.
No transparency for you.
How come it's not like an outline of the window when you drag it? It's actually showing you the whole window. That's interesting.
Yeah. Wow. Look at that. Overlapping windows be darned.
Sure. Thank you, Bill Atkins.
I'm getting seasick. Woo.
That's pretty good, though, isn't it? That's nice.
Yeah.
Given that this is it's a U or a Y processor. Okay, good. This is going to be fun. I'll play with it, but I have to put it on my ThinkPad because that's what I have Windows Pro on. So I use LSW. You need a good terminal, and they announced this way back when. I mean, this has been in the works for a while.
Yeah. Last Ignite was it when they announced it?
I feel like they announced it a long time ago.
No, that could be.
Windows 10. Is there a new fast ring?
So far, no.
No.
Not yet.
I seem to be doing it when the show's on.
Or lately, right after the show ends.
Right after.
Yeah.
There's always like an announcement right when the show ends. I know. Not that that's suspicious per se, but it's suspicious per se.
I think Donna Zakar is sitting there waiting till the show's over, and then she pushes the big red button.
You know what else I don't like about Bill Gates, by the way? No.
Stop! No!
Oh, this next item, he's going to rant.
No.
I gotta get
Why, what's the next item?
Here we go. Let's just start with the gong.
Oh God, yeah.
19H2.
So, all right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to skip it.
Skip it.
I'm going to skip it.
Okay. All we need to say is.
I'm going to let Mary Jo handle this in her calmer demeanor.
Yeah. Let me do this. 19H2, everyone's asking us, where is it? We don't know either. I don't even know if Microsoft knows where it is. It's coming. It's coming. There is going to be a 19H2. I keep hearing people have found references to Windows 10 1909 in documentation. It's coming. We just don't know where it is. Microsoft had said originally, at least one person at Microsoft, Brandon LeBlanc, had said, I think he said this spring we'll have more to tell you all about where it is and what's coming. And spring has passed now. We don't know. There's been no answer. That's all I can tell you.
Nothing. I can't talk.
What, did you tape your mouth shut? What the?
You did. Good job.
Oh man. Steam
is coming out of his ears, but he's staying
That'll
calm.
make for compelling listening for all you audio listeners, but.
The sound of tape ripping off.
I need that eagle sound that they always use in the westerns, to show that you're in the wilderness.
Yep.
Yeah, right. The distant cry.
There you go.
It's a little loud though.
It's like the first 10 minutes of Once Upon a Time in the West, where it's just like a bell slowly ringing out in the middle of nowhere.
The stranger came into town. No one knew what he was there for.
Was that a cat?
What? The kitty cat knew. You want a bigger cat? I got all the cats. Surface Book 2. I don't care. I'm going to say that right now. I don't care.
Yeah.
I am waiting for an updated Go.
You're telling me that you don't care about an update to an 18-month-old laptop? You, sir, are a fraud.
I bought the first one, Surface Book 1. It still has that goofy clothespin hinge, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a nice laptop. The 15-inch version can now be had in a $2,000 configuration.
As Sundog is pointing out in the chat room, the OLED XPS 15 from Dell comes out tomorrow.
Oh boy.
That would be a nice choice. I had an OLED ThinkPad I really liked.
Yeah.
I can tell.
So what's new about 15-inch? That's it?
Yeah, Mary Jo, that's it. No, it's no.
Oh,
no,
God.
There's been a 15-inch version for a while. It's just a cheaper configuration without a GPU.
No GPU. You know, the GPU is what made that thing work wonky for so long, to be honest. Because wasn't the GPU in the keyboard, the second battery and a GPU in the keyboard, the main processor, no, or vice versa. Then something was in the screen, and then when you detached the screen, the GPU turned off.
Right.
And it got confused.
It was the GPU, wasn't it? The GPU was in
the keyboard.
The base.
I think. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It still is. Yep, the DGPU. Yep.
So I bet you'd do better without a GPU.
You better not detaching the screen. You know, I think that would solve the problem too, by the way.
Or there's always that.
Yeah, just a thought.
Just a thought.
Yep.
Okay. Microsoft changes plans. Now, I thought, so there were rumors when they announced Scarlet, the next generation Xbox, that there'd be two, but I don't think, did Microsoft ever say there would be two?
No, they didn't, but they were absolutely working on two.
Oh.
I never thought that two models made sense. When you look at the model lineup and the way it's kind of gone from the original to the S to the X, there's a nice kind of ramp up. I think the next one should just be the ramp up from the X, and that's what it's going to be. So they've backtracked. I think maybe before they were thinking, we'll release two and we'll get rid of all the old ones, you know? And I think the way it's going to be now is the current X will be eventually be the new baseline. So that's fine. That's absolutely fine.
Okay. Mary Jo, you survived the Xbox segment. Now let us take...
He had a separate Xbox segment, and I just erased it.
What? Okay.
I was like, let's just put that under hardware and just like whip through that.
Every gongable moment, we're just going to take something away from you. It's the only way. It's like, you got to teach the puppy not to pee on the floor.
We're going to take a break, and we shall return with the back of the book. But first, this word from Levi's.
There was a stranger who came into our town. He was tall and had eyes that could look right to the bottom of you. We might have welcomed him, except for one thing. His pants. They weren't dull like ours. This troubled us. Stranger, how is it your pants have colors and flared legs? He just smiled and said, I'm wearing Levi's. Dull has gone out of style. Then in his strange way, he transported us to a world of Levi's slacks and jeans, tweeds, cords, flares with Dacron polyester. It was magic. Push jeans, blue jeans, bells, beautiful Levi's magic coveralls, knickers, and mitts.
Knickers?
No,
I want knickers.
This has done more to harm Westerns than like paint and wagon.
Where are my knickers? What we had knickers in 1971, and now no knickers. I want knickers. That was the late great. He just passed away a few months ago. Ken Nordine, Chicago, the voice of Chicago. Somebody reminded me that he was the guy who said, "The stranger came into town with the eagle flying high." Our show today, I wish we could say brought to you by an eagle, but instead it's brought to you by a canary. How about that? You guys know what a honeypot is. I got a honeypot right here. I got my honeypot right here. Look at this thing. This is so cool. This is a canary.
So it's not a literal honeypot.
There's no honey in the honeypot. Well, unless you're a hacker. Canaries are designed to sit on your network like a regular device. They don't look vulnerable. They look valuable. They look like there's something in here. This particular canary, I can tell you, is configured to look like a Synology NAS. If you open up its IP address, you'll get the Synology login. You'll enter the password, and then something will go wrong, and I will get an alert saying somebody just tried to log into your phony Synology NAS. I love that. You can make it be Microsoft Windows Server. You can make it be, if you wanted, you could make it be XP or Vista or 7 or 8 or 10. You could turn up what they call a Christmas tree of all these services. You could, so this makes it look like, wow, if you're bad, and no, we keep hearing about this thing called APT, Advanced Persistent Threats. That's when Bad guy, often a nation state, gets into your system. It happened to Sony Pictures Entertainment. They wandered around. They got in May. They wandered around and weren't discovered till October. Or Starwood, which later got purchased by Marriott. The guys were wandering around inside the Marriott network for 4 years, exfiltrated 500 million guest records, and nobody knew they were there. That's the point. We just heard about a new one at JPL. Somebody had brought in the Raspberry Pi to NASA's JPL facility, put it on the network, and NASA's policies, the JPL policies, were not good because they allowed, first of all, weird things on the network, and they didn't inventory it. They didn't know it was there. They didn't observe the traffic going to it. And for more than a year, somebody was wandering around the JPL network, a bad guy, exfiltrated, not a whole lot, 0.5 megabyte of files, but still not good. They need the canary. That's why so many banks, large banks, security, anything that wants to be secure. That's why we have it on our network. You sprinkle a few canaries on your network. They don't bombard you with alerts. In fact, the best thing about my canary is I never hear from it. But I know it works because somebody brought in I won't say what company, Western Digital, hard drive that was a NAS and put it on our network. Megan did. Won't say who, but Megan did it. And then the next day, I'm getting all these alerts that somebody's surveying our network. What? The canary. The IP address it's inside the network. It's a 10 dot. What? We went. We found it, and we needless to say, sent it right back to Western Digital. Said no, thank you. But that's the kind of thing. So I know it's working, but you don't want to hear from it. You just get one good alert when there's somebody on your network. Canaries also can set up canary tokens. Those are files. They look like PDFs or spreadsheets or whatever you want. They look like documents. But the minute somebody opens them, and by the way, name it something like I won't say what I'll tell you. I've got files called payroll information, employee social security numbers. That's probably a bad name. You should just say employee information, right? All over the network. Somebody opens those up. I hear from it. I know there's an intruder alert. These are so brilliant. The company that makes these canaries, Thinkst, has been doing this for 20 years. They've been in the security game forever. They've trained companies, militaries. They've trained governments on how to break into networks. They're white hat hackers, and they used every bit of experience and knowledge to build this amazing thing, the canary. They're very affordable. And you don't buy them outright. You just lease them. So if a canary breaks, no problem. They just ship you a new one. It's all built into the price. And you don't have to have a lot of them. We only have one. Some small shops two. Some banks have hundreds. It depends on what your needs are. There are canaries deployed all over the world, literally on all 7 continents. In fact, if you want to see, if you go to canary.tools/love, you can see all the tweets about the canary from some of the biggest companies. The CTO of Slack. Is it Slack? I think it's Slack. Loves the canary. Says only a couple of things you need to keep your network safe. The canary is one of them. But you can go see all those tweets. They are beloved in Silicon Valley. If you are responsible for a network, you need canaries. Canaries are the way. The last stat I saw is that on average, you get a data breach in your company. The average length of time between the breach and discovering the breach is 191 days. That's more than 6 months. That's crazy. You want to know the minute somebody's on your network, the canary will tell you. Don't end up on this year's list of the top 10 data breaches of 2019. Go to canary.tools/twit. Now, let me give you an example of pricing. The price varies on depending how many you want. Let's say you want 5 of them. $7,500 a year. You get the 5 canaries, your hosted console. You get all upgrades, all support, complete maintenance for a full year. But I'm going to make it even less expensive. If you use the code TWIT in the offer code, where it says, how did you hear about us? You just put TWIT, 10% off, and not just for the first year, but for life. So that's a big discount. We know you're going to love the Thinkst Canary, but they understand sometimes people, whatever things happen, 2-month money-back guarantee. So you have 60 days to evaluate it. I know you want to evaluate it first, but I'm telling you, you will love it. I love my canary. You could set it up to be anything. You could set it up to be a SCADA device. So if you're worried about Stuxnet, you can actually impersonate a Siemens SCADA device, like bomb enrichment, uranium enrichment centrifuge, and the hacker will go right to it. That's why you want more than one, so you can have a variety of personalities on your network. And it's so great because you can make unlimited canary tokens, and that's great too. Go to canary, canary.tools/twit. That's the address. They're from Thinkst. Canary.tools/twit. use TWIT in the offer code. These things are the most brilliant invention ever. A honeypot that say you could set up in minutes. In minutes, you'll feel so much better knowing it's on your network and knowing they're not. Canary.tools/twit. We thank Canary for believing in Windows Weekly and knowing that the people who need canaries are watching this very show. You let them know by using that special URL. Now, Paul Thurrott, it's time for the back of the book, your tip of the week.
Tip is 100 reasons why Bill Gates was... No, I'm sorry.
Get the tape.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Nice.
No,
don't make me fire up this sound effects machine.
Sorry. 2 tips. So I've been writing a series of articles. It's for premium customers, so you actually would have to join my Thurrott Premium program. But for a variety of reasons, it occurred to me fairly recently that one way to look at the history of Windows and the reason why things happened when they did and how they did was to look at the other side of the coin, so to speak, which is the way that developers created applications for Windows at any point in time. And so I've been kind of documenting what that's looked like over time. And by over time, I mean like the really early 1990s, because I haven't gotten out of the early stuff yet. But eventually I'm going to touch on,
this is cool.
C++ and object-oriented programming and .NET and store apps and blah, 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 and all that stuff. So it's I think I've written 8 articles so far. There's probably going to be, there'll probably be dozens eventually. I mean, it's going to be many, many articles, but it's been an interesting little trip down memory lane. I think the people who listen to this podcast would like it.
I love it. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think, I made this thing. I think it's pretty cool. I do think it's pretty cool. And if you were dumb enough to buy ebooks from Microsoft, good news. Your refund is coming in July. And that refund will be for any books that you purchased. So if and that will be applied to whatever your payment method was. If that payment method is invalid, you'll get a credit to your Microsoft account. And if you were one of the 3 or 4 people who actually took notes in an ebook you bought from Microsoft, you'll get a $25 credit to your Microsoft account. So be on the lookout for that. That will be coming sometime in July. And then my app pick is kind of a not app pick because increasingly, as more and more information comes out about Google, who in many ways is the new Microsoft, and their kind of privacy stealing, online tracking stuff, it seems like maybe a move away from Chrome might be in order. I happen to be using Edge. It's probably a little too early for most people, although people listening to this podcast are probably kind of good to go for that. And now that it's available everywhere, Windows 7, 8, 10, and the Mac, you can check that out. Firefox is promoting the fact that they're blocking all third-party trackers now. If you want something that doesn't require a lot of configuration, that's a good choice. Or you could go with one of the outliers like Brave, which is based on Brave and Opera are both based on Chromium, and Brave in particular is very aggressive about privacy and anti-tracking as well. So just some options to think about if you're starting to be worried about Google, where Bill Gates does not work.
By the way, if you are a premium member, you'll want to read the "No, Bill, no" article for a more detailed rant. But I'm just looking at this. This is such a great series on programming Windows. Really, really cool. Really, really cool. I'm glad you're writing this.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting, return to my roots thing.
It's giving me chills.
I don't get to write a lot of code these days, so it's actually been kind of fun.
Nice. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it, Paul.
Thank you, sir.
And now it's time for our Enterprise Pick of the Week with Mary Jo Foley. MJ?
Yes. This is a pick for all the Office 365 business users who've been frustrated about the ability to not simply view, share, and edit PDFs when they're in SharePoint Online and Office 365. Believe it or not, in order to do that, until a week or so ago, you had to first download and save the PDF before you could even view it if you were using SharePoint or OneDrive for Business. But after 3 years of requests and many tiers, 1,926 user voice votes to introduce this feature,
Wow.
200 angry ranting comments.
Holy cow.
Any from Bill Gates?
Yeah, none from Bill Gates. Microsoft and Adobe have made this happen. So just like you can with SharePoint on premises, now you no longer have to download and save your PDF in order to view, share, and edit.
Hallelujah.
I know. It's another one of those features when somebody asked me about it, I'm like, that can't be right. And then I was like, yep, it's not there. So yeah, thank you to all the people at Microsoft and Adobe who finally made that happen. I'm getting a lot of positive tweets about it. People saying, oh, finally, this was a deal breaker for my site. I couldn't do things that I needed to do, and I wasn't going to upgrade to Office 365 because of this. So now it's there.
Nice. And your code name of the week.
Yes, this is a code name that Brad Sams has a little hand in.
Oh, no.
That guy in the bunny suit. Codename is Excalibur. Windows Central and Brad are both hearing there's something codenamed Excalibur, which sounds like it has to do with an ARM-based Surface Pro.
Because of the arm and the stone.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I was like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, that could be it.
The sword and the stone, you use your arm to pull it out.
You know, I wonder. That would be crazy if that's why it's
right? That's
Excalibur,
the sword.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
King
So
Arthur's
Brad here's Excalibur is the codename of the SoC in the coming ARM-based Surface Pro, and Windows Central here's the device itself may be codenamed Excalibur. But it does sound like Microsoft is getting more serious about coming out with Surface devices that are not just Intel-based.
Yep.
When? Could be this fall, as part of the fall-October expected Surface launch. Might be after that. I even heard speculation from a couple people that they could be working on a Centaurus type device that has ARM in it as well.
So HP released an ARM, the NVX2, but did Microsoft ever do an ARM computer? No.
They didn't, right?
Only,
no.
Okay.
No.
Only OEMs.
Yep, only OEMs.
And just a couple. Lenovo had one.
Everyone's waiting for that more powerful ARM chip, right?
Yeah.
But
What is that, the 8?
Yeah, wait till September. That's when the first announcements will be for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that 8CX? Is that it? Or has it been renamed to
8.
something else?
Yeah, no, that's the rename. It's 8CX.
That is a rename. 8CX.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Finally, let's have a beer, why don't we?
I have an unusual beer pick. You know how I'm always coming in with the 17%. You can only drink one.
We're starting to wonder.
Embrace and extend.
Yeah. Embrace and fall
Today's
over.
pick is a light beer.
Oh,
You know, most light beers are really terrible, like
Yeah.
absolutely horrible, not
Yeah.
worth drinking.
Yeah.
Dogfish Head in Delaware has made a light beer that is actually good. It's called Slighty Mighty. 4%, only 100 calories, and I had a sample of this the other day, and it actually tastes like something you would want to drink.
All right, I have a question.
Yes.
How many carbs?
That's all we
I don't
care
know.
about. That's all we
Right.
care
Oh, it
about.
says, wait, go back.
It
to
ain't
the top.
calories.
Does it say?
It's the carbs. No.
3.6 carbs. That's a low carb beer.
That's drinkable.
Okay. It actually
I
tastes
could
really
drink
good.
that if I didn't hate IPAs.
Yeah. So you know what? It didn't taste like an IPA to me. When I had it, it just tasted like a really good beer. And it took Dogfish Head 3 years to come up with the recipe,
Wow.
allegedly, because they just kept trying different sweeteners and how can we make this taste like a beer, even though it's really light. So if you see it anywhere, it's worth a try if you would like to try a light beer.
I would try it.
Yeah, I think you should give it a whirl, another whirl, just like
I've not
Windows Terminal.
had like an actual right. I haven't had a beer actually had an entire beer in
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
2.5 years. I don't know, it's been a long
Paul
time.
and I eschew the carb items.
Yes.
The carburetors.
I eat some carbs, but I prefer to eat them in forms that I find to be delicious.
I'm just going to say, cheese without a cracker is barely worth
It's tough. It's tough.
beating.
Yeah, that's tough.
I tried.
My family had brownies last night. You know?
Oh.
Oh,
Thanks, guys.
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I put them on I put the cheese on a bell pepper,
Cheese
but that
crackers.
doesn't.
Oh, no.
Cheese
no.
crackers
they have
are okay. Those are good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like a cracker.
So that kind of thing's okay.
You
It can be
basically
okay.
bake cheese till it's hard as a rock, and then it's a cracker.
Right.
You can do that with like grated parm too.
Yeah.
Like grate parm.
Yeah, parm does that.
Make
Yeah.
tortilla better.
They're good.
Yeah.
I get a lot of those.
Sandwich shops aren't as fun.
No, they
Tell you
kind of take
that.
the fun out of a sub. The other day, I ordered a panini minus the bread.
Yeah, I get a
Basically,
lot of comments
you get
from
the
people
nini.
still on that kind of thing. Like we went to the local hamburger joint over the weekend, and they were like, "Seriously?" I'm like, I cannot be the first person has come in.
No, you can't.
You can go to In-N-Out and say protein style, and they'll wrap it in lettuce. It's just, I don't.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
Anyway, Paul and I are on this weird diet. That's just the way we are.
It's working though. You guys are
We're
both feeling
wasting
and looking
away,
good.
aren't we, Paul?
Oh yeah,
There's
that's
hardly
a huge
anything
problem.
left.
Yeah, yeah. At least I'm not eating bread.
Yeah. At least I don't enjoy life.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
Right. I may not be
I
losing
vaguely
weight, but
remember what beer tastes like.
beer, and
Aw.
bread, no pasta. But my mashed cauliflower makes an excellent.
Oh, stop! Oh, I can't.
Cauliflower rice is good. It actually is good.
If you put enough cheese in it.
Exactly.
exactly.
Well, you can. You can eat cheese.
No, I
can't
can.
you?
I do. I laid it up, man. Butter, cheese, garlic.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's, you know what? It's still cauliflower.
I
Love
know.
cauliflower. Cauliflower is great.
I
Kale,
like
cauliflower.
cauliflower. When you come out, and by the way, little announcement, Mary Jo has agreed to be part of our Christmas. We're actually planning our Christmas show already.
Oh boy.
And Paul, the only reason we didn't invite you is because it's all women.
Yeah. No, I get it, Leo. It's fine. This
Actually,
is
I would-
the new tech world.
You can come too. It's all right.
I don't like this kind of discrimination.
But
you
when we come, Mary Jo, when you come out, I'm gonna bring you to the Shuckery, little restaurant
Nice.
downtown. They make what they call buffalo cauliflower. They take
yum.
cauliflower, they
Sounds good.
dredge it in rice flour, they deep fat fry it, they put their own version of Frank's hot sauce on it. It is the best thing ever. I could eat
Sounds
that
good.
all day.
Yum.
Okay, that's it.
That's the only reason I'm coming, to have the
By the
buffalo
way,
cauliflower.
that'd be darn fine with the beer. That'd be
Oh yeah,
so
for
good.
sure.
A nice
I want to
nice
try
cold
that.
beer.
The Hen House, is that the name of the
Yeah,
brewery?
we'll take you to
I wanna
the
try that.
Keanu is
Yeah.
Immortal beer. We'll take you to Hen House. It's across the way. Great saisons.
Nice.
There's
You're
beer.
all spectacular.
There's a lot of good beer out here.
Yeah, there
Paul
is.
and I will be watching from the side. No wonder we're so cranky.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't understand.
My wife was drinking a beer and eating a brownie last night. I'm like, I think I'll have some peas.
Beer and brownies sounds awful.
That does. It doesn't sound like a good combo.
Beer and
Unless you had a
brownies.
stout. A stout would be
A
good.
stout, a cake stout. Then throw the brownie out and drink the stout.
It's worse. My wife, as Mary Jo knows, is also as thin as a rail. So it's
Yeah, that's really frustrating.
it's
Same with
doubly
Lisa.
irritating.
Same with Lisa. She's eating watermelon, ice cream. I mean, it's like,
Yep.
ladies and gentlemen, we come to the conclusion of this very strange, bitter show.
Paul, you know you're going to hear about this.
No, I love it's good. But
I
I'm hoping
think
Justin
people need-
Salvato can make us
to know the truth.
a very
That's all I'm saying.
special Family Guy
That would
episode.
be funny. That would be good.
Yeah.
Right.
Tonight,
Bill
like-
Gates was on the Family Guy a couple of times.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Right. He was. Yep.
Justin, your work is cut out for you. We do Windows Weekly every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1700 UTC. You can watch us do it live, twit.tv/live, or listen. We have live audio and video streams. You can even ask your Echo or your Google Assistant. In most cases, you say, hey, yoo-hoo, listen to Twit Live, and it'll just start playing. And whatever's going on, that's what you'll hear. You can also say, listen
not an
to
actual command.
Not,
Don't actually say
command
hey, you.
simulated. Yeah. Oh, yoo-hoo! My favorite is that
do declare.
I still love that Saturday Night Live Amazon Echo Silver ad, where it's for the older folks, and it doesn't. You can call her Aloysius. You can call her like my father-in-law does, Alexandra. Doesn't matter.
Right.
She will respond. Now I'm completely lost my train of thought. We have on-demand versions of the show as well at our website, twit.tv/dubdub, WW for Windows Weekly. It's on YouTube. Best thing to do would really be to subscribe. That way you'll get it every Tuesday afternoon the minute it's ready for you. Thank you, Paul. Paul Thurrot's at Thurrott.com. That's his blog. His books are at leanpub.com. Don't forget the field guide to Windows 10 is up to date through 1903, right?
It's getting there.
Getting there. Will be. And it's included in
yep.
the cover price. You get it automatically. There's some great posters if they're not sold out. Get those posters. They're so cool. On how to use, how to use Windows and stuff. Mary Jo Foley writes about Microsoft at ZDNet. Her blog is allaboutmicrosoft.com. And together they are the dynamic duo of Windows Weekly. By which I mean they both wear capes and tights.
At all times.
At all times.
Run around at night, solving crimes.
Yeah, the crime busters. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.